All right, and welcome to the 23rd episode of the Online Network of Independent Learning Professionals. Today, we're super excited. Tammy Knoll-Anderson is going to be speaking to us about performance support. It's a topic that Madeline was even asking about just a few minutes ago, so it's just something that we're super excited to hear about and then to have a lively conversation about afterwards. We also have a great panel for today. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Tammy in just a second. But if you have any questions, just put them in the chat like always. We'll get to them. And Tammy, could you maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do? And I'm going to put everyone else on mute. That way we don't have any interference.
So can you hear me, everybody?
Yes.
So about 5 years ago, I started working with a company for quality assurance to review their courses and make sure that, you know, everything was editorially sound, and also made sure all of the bells and whistles were working right. And over time, it just grew into becoming my own business. I worked with them for several years, gaining skills and experience and in a variety of ways. And then I started branching out probably in the last year and a half and finding my own clients and building my own business. So my business is MT Anderson. That's my husband's Mark, and I'm Tammy Anderson Learning. And so we just kind of decided to go out on our own and just let everything fall where it may. And so far we've been more busy than we know how to handle, so worked out well.
That is incredible. Incredible to hear. We were having a little conversation before everyone jumped on about how much work Tammy is taking on right now and the ebb and flow of that. So yeah, we'll just go ahead and jump right into performance support. Let's hear a little bit about your experience with it and what you can share.
So how do I share my screen? I just take over?
At the bottom.
Okay,
yeah,
got
so
it.
Just at the bottom.
All
and
right.
Then you just pick what you want to share, or you can share your whole desktop, whatever works best for you.
So can you see my screen now?
Yes, the moments of need performance support.
Got it. So I'm going to do this slideshow.
Perfect, that's what we see. It's just
Awesome.
a slide now.
Okay, so yes, this is really the philosophy behind performance support, is that it is finding the information and the advantage that you need at the time you need it, and that is basically at the moment when you need to apply what you've learned. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. And I'm going to take advantage of this, which is not working for me. I have a video. Maybe it won't work.
We tried video once. Well, let's just try and see. So you might just share your whole desktop. Did you just share like the PowerPoint, or did you share the whole desktop?
The PowerPoint. That's okay. It's not really critical. So I started out in academia with basically a background in first and second language acquisition. And when I heard about the performance support, the whole concept of it, it sounded to me like it really resonated with something that I was learning when I was in school about language acquisition. So I always kind of come back to this, and I look at, understanding the learning need and going back to the crash in theory of comprehensible input. And that is that I+1 is where you make your change. So most of the time, delving deeply into grammatical rules and structures and syntax and semantics is not really where you learn language. You actually learn language from that practice, applying it, and having somebody help you pass that gap, just over that little gap that it takes to get to the point where you can express yourself fluently. So I think about this like, and the analogy is of a child learning to ride a bike. and the training wheels have come off, and mom or dad is pushing them down the road, and they take off on their own. So that's why I have the wheels, because the wheels to me represent that moment of flight where the child is able to bridge the gap and do this on their own. So that's where I kind of land with the theory, and I'm kind of go into the definition of it. So performance support is really about having that information that's tailored to the individual, the audience, the specific audience, and it's available at their moment of need. And it really is about performance, about being able to take what you learned in any situation, go back to your desk, and actually use it in your everyday work. So I also kind of think of it as a GPS. It provides just enough information at the moment that you need it so that you can complete the task. It's optimized so that you can use it within a specific context. You're finding that information where you're in the workflow. So it's embedded within that workflow. And it's chunks of information that are small and bite-sized, so not something that's going to overwhelm you with all of the context and other things that might be important or interesting, but not necessarily going to allow you to move through whatever the steps are that you need to perform that task. So you can't teach people everything they need to know. The best you can do is just position them so that they can find what they need to know when they need to know it. So the performance support has sort of evolved over the years, and the 5 moments of learning need is something that has been developed to sort of be the basis and the theory behind performance support. What it's saying is that the formal learning, which is the new, or the more learning is what you're learning additionally from skills that you already have. These are the classroom learnings. This is e-learning. This is where you're learning on your own, and you're focused on the learning, not the doing. But once you go and you take that formal learning back to your desk, that's where the informal learning starts. And that's where we say we have the 5 moments of need. The first moment is when you're learning something new. The second moment is when you're learning more about something. And then you start coming over to the informal learning side. This is learning. Change is about change management, learning when something changes in order to adapt. Solve is when you come up against a problem and you need help to get through it or overcome it. And apply is the actual moment of need. And that is when you are trying to do something that you have learned and to put it into practice. So I'm going to go ahead and go on. And the reason that it's relevant, and the thing is that you need to know about the, let's go back for just a minute, about the 5 moments of need, is that there are lots of different ways that you can see performance support and have performance support help you. Let's go ahead and go forward. So EPSS is Embedded Performance Support Solution. And what that means is that we're taking information or knowledge, which maybe in performance support is sort of evolved from knowledge management. We're taking that information and that knowledge, and we're embedding it into a system or a process in a way that makes it available immediately and gives guidance or assistance at the moment of need. So here we have the model again with the first and the second moment of need. And we see that that's 10% of learning. And learning, that's the formal learning that you do in the classroom. When you get to apply, that's when you take it to the practice and you sit down with the system that you learned and you try to do something, or whatever the process or whatever the program is that you have to work through. So then you have the solve, the change, and then you're going to eventually you're going to learn more about whatever it is. And apparently sometimes you will sort of stay in your learning mode that you have and be at a certain level, and then other times you will deepen in your understanding and become an expert. %70 of the workflow is in is learning in the workflow, is being at your desk and actually learning, and 20% is the social learning. And basically that is saying the things that you learn from the environment around you, including your colleagues and peer support sorts of things. So these are the principles of performance support, and how it's different from knowledge management. For the most part, most of the people who decide to use performance support use an EPSS, which is embedded into whatever system or program that they're trying to teach. It's contextual because it's geared specifically for the audience of that particular individual for whatever it is that they need to do in their role, and just enough. And so we're going to talk about how we chunk out the knowledge so that it's not overwhelming, but it's still available. And that's where the pyramid comes into play. So the performance support pyramid, this is really the philosophy behind performance support. The moment of need is driven by the formal training, which is the training objectives, concepts, steps, practice, and that's where you're being taught in moments 1 and 2. And then this is when you do, is in moments 3 through 5. And this is how training has normally worked when it comes to learning something. A good example is a system, a new system like Salesforce.com or something like that. It doesn't have to be a technical system for this to still be valid, but that's a good example of one. So this is how it typically works. And what the Apply Synergies people, Bob and Con, have come up with over their time of learning how to help their clients to address this apply or this moment of need, is they have decided to flip this. They flip the funnel and they turn it into a pyramid. So they say that the moment of need is the top, and that the process, steps, concepts, and the practice flow from that down, from smallest to largest. So the context in the pyramid is going to be things like the audience, who you are, how long do you have to complete a process, what are the types of processes that you need in your role. The steps, and this is basically almost like where we get the design from, is those are the quick steps, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, how do you do it? The detailed steps are actually over on the next tab, where you'll see things like more screenshots, more detailed context on why you do things, not just how to do them. The supporting knowledge is going to be, those are the things that help you understand things like the, let me see if I can come up with some examples. The context for it, or actually no, not the context, the base knowledge around it. Things that are not necessarily steps, but that give you the historical perspective of why you need to do these things. The reference resources are job aids, frequently asked questions, any kind of documents that you have, support documents, anything that can help you if you need a deeper dive. Learning resources are the e-learning, videos, simulations, any practice manuals, that sort of thing. And then the largest part is at the bottom of the pyramid, which is the people resources. And that's where you get involved in things like wikis, blogs, chats, where you can actually reach out. And I always think of Articulate Storyline eLearning Heroes as being the best example of how performance support with their forums can work. So clicking on. So I'm going to go ahead and go into some examples. I have a couple examples so I can kind of show you. Right up to this point, it's been a lot of theory and a lot of, why we do performance support, and what the sort of philosophy is around how it's designed. But let's look at a couple examples. So first, this is Salesforce.com, and it's a really good example because it's system-based, so you can see how the EPSS is working in an embedded way. So when you're a user of Salesforce.com and you have this embedded support system, down at the bottom on the right, you'll see there's a little icon that you can click and get guidance on whatever process or function that you're working through. Salesforce is good too because there's a lot of guidance and performance support associated with some of the terminology. The sales process looks different to every organization. So this way, whatever organization is using it can customize it to say a prospect equals blah, blah, blah. You have to have X, Y, Z in order for this person or this organization, this company to be considered a prospect. Or it's not an opportunity until you have qualified it. And here's what it means to qualify an opportunity. All of that kind of information can help define the process, the sales process in Salesforce.com, and could be different for different organizations. So once you've clicked it, because you said, oh, I do need some assistance, so I clicked on that, and then you see, okay, here's opportunities, and it gives you a good, some tasks associated with how do you view opportunities, how do you edit them, how do you create opportunities, how do you create a pursuit plan. Those are the kinds of things that are available for you and performance support related to this particular screen, the opportunity screen. If you choose, you can open up one of those tasks and you'll see steps, and this is the quick steps. Basically, you're going to see mostly text. It's going to be very short. Do this, do that, click. And often this is just a reminder. You already probably did this task maybe 6 months ago and you haven't done it in a while, and you just need to know a little bit about, which direction to go next. If, however, you're new and you're a little more lost, you can go to the details, which is the next tab over, if you can see that. And generally, this is where you start to have more screenshots. You have more specifics around you'll have more of like a narrative that will open up and tell you a little more about why you're doing it, not just how to do it, and show you more around what the steps entail. So if you go over to the next tab over, you'll see that there's more reference information available. There's a note here with the tip, opportunity size guidelines. So this gives you sort of a definition of what that opportunity size means and how you need to make decisions related to that field.
And since we're on this screen, Tammy, we had one question. That Salesforce Assistant notice in the bottom right, is that part of Salesforce or is that an add-on? Do you know?
Right, it is an add-on. That's what the EPSS is. It's embedded. It's a system that's designed to work in tandem with another system. Now, like for instance, when I was talking about KPMG, theirs isn't necessarily step-by-step instructions. It's audit guidance, and basically they have, it's more of a narrative than a step-by-step format, but they have forms that the auditors have to complete, and the auditors need to have real quick and easy steps on how to complete those forms related to audit, decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Any
Okay,
other questions that we needed to go through, or ready?
I think we're good for the, well, actually, Dave has one more. Is there a list of EPSS and tools they work with, or if there are desktop versions of an EPSS?
Yes, and one of the things I did at the very end, I have a slide that has some organizations that are vendors for performance support and some of their systems. A lot of times the vendors have developed their own systems, but there are a couple other systems that we're familiar with that people do use as performance support. They have to kind of customize it a little bit, but it can serve the same use. And not all performance support is embedded. Sometimes there's a performance support option that can lay on your desktop, and you can just open it up whenever you feel like you need additional instruction.
Perfect. So, Dave says, great, thank you.
Any other questions with Salesforce? Because I think we're ready to go on.
Not at the moment. If anybody has a question, go ahead and put it in. We'll get to it. Yeah.
All right. So the next example is one that our group is familiar with, Storyline. So we can use Storyline as performance support, and what that would look like is a lot like a tabbed interaction. But it would be like a knowledge base. So like this would be the initial screen that somebody would come into, and this is a performance support system that somebody did create for their organization. Then, when you would drill down, you would have tabs that would be like tasks, and each one of these tasks, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is, say if you clicked on nursing, you would drill down for more detailed steps on things you need to know and things you need to do associated with nursing. And then, and then you could explore the other tabs as well. Learn more and help me could be, and these are very much customized by pretty much every client, depending on what they feel like meets the needs of their organization. But for the most part, the design intent is quick steps is left, and that's the quick, easy hit where you get the chunks of information so that you don't get overwhelmed. Detailed steps gives you more information and more in visual aspect. The learn more is often the resources tab where people will put anything that has to do like frequently asked questions or anything like that. And then the help me now can be usually training. Sometimes these two are flipped, 3 and 4, but usually the 4th tab has training, videos, e-learning, simulations, and that sort of thing. So I was concerned that I wasn't going to have enough time in 30 minutes to present my entire presentation. Did I just talk really fast, or?
No, you did great.
Awesome. All right. So here are resources. All these are links. So when you put this up on the Slack site, people can go down there, over there, grab it, and come in here and click on these links to access. There's a professional organization group, and I'm not sure if you heard me mention Apply Synergies with Bob and Con. Those are 2 guys who have been really big in the performance support realm, and they have a professional organization for performance support. It's called Performer Support. There are a couple vendors that I know of, and I'm sure there are more. This isn't an exhaustive list, but these are some of the big ones in the industry. I've worked with Intuitive, Apply Synergies. One of my colleagues is working with Panviva now. There's Ansel and Epilogue are also vendors that will go out and find clients for performance support. Some of the tools they use: Intuitive developed Learning Guide Manager, which was a desktop installation, because somebody was asking about that. And yes, that still is out there, and you can reach out to Intuitive to get that from them. There's Manage, which is what Intuitive has graduated to. It's their cloud solution. Support Point, pretty sure that is Panviva. Of course, Articulate Storyline, depending on how you develop it, you could make it work as a performance support solution. SharePoint, lots of organizations are using SharePoint, which is sort of a knowledge management repository in a performance support manner. And then Epilogue Advisor is another one. Epilogue is one of the vendors, and they have their own, they've developed their own tool, Advisor. So then I think these are all there for you, and if you exhaust this list, I might be able to find you some more. But I guess the question now is, do you have any questions?
The question is, what questions? Okay, questions? We have a couple questions. So Joel is asking, what's the difference between performance support and ordinary help for a program? Like, how do you know, like, you're moving into the performance support instead of a simple help?
Well, help is generally a single file that is basically it's all kind of flat. It's organized by sort of chapters and topics, not in a way that's like giving you the information you need at the moment you need it. The fact that performance support is built into the system, when you access a certain screen, only certain information becomes available to you. As a user guide, when you go into some of these systems applications help, they are just overwhelming. You open it up and there's not really much in the way of guidance to get to what you really need or the question that you have. So I guess that's really the primary difference in how it's designed and how it's presented.
Yeah. I think that definitely makes sense. It's more of a flat, and this seems more dynamic, and like you said, it's like that just in time, wherever you are, then you've got just the help you need instead of something that doesn't apply.
Exactly. And it's also built into the workflow. That's a big principle for it. Just make sure that whatever screen you're on that you're having trouble with, that's the information that's presented to you. Yeah.
And Dave is asking, what are some challenges with implementing a process like this?
It definitely has to be enterprise-wide decision as far as like one small department is not going to implement performance support because it's too big. It's too big of a process. It requires lots in terms of technical collaboration with the IT folks at the client, and also it can get expensive. So those are really the challenges there are.
The expense piece, is that something where, okay, so we're not going to do some enterprise wide solution that is going to be embedded help for maybe our call center agents, but what we could do then, is that where like Storyline or something a little bit simpler could come in and fill the gap?
Mm-hmm. I do think that a department that is large enough to be like 100, 150 could support this, but other than that, if you have like a group that's like 30 or 40 people, you're generally not going to be able to get at the embedded part very easily. Yeah. And these generally are very big projects. Like the clients I've worked with are Boeing, Bayer, ExxonMobil, KPMG, really huge clients like that.
And as like an independent learning professional, how, like, so they come to you and they say, they don't really need online learning, but what they need is some kind of system to help, like just use the call center agent example. We need some kind of system to help our call center agents get up and running, or how does that relationship type of start with the consulting?
So in my case, I haven't gone directly to the client in any of these situations. And I think that's just kind of the nature of it because, as I said, they tend to be really large projects. So as somebody who is out there who is kind of trying to break into performance support and learn about it and have these kinds of projects offered to you, I would suggest that you go to the vendors that are getting these projects and send them your resume, send them your information, and just let them know that you're interested. There's also that professional organization that I put out there, and if you become involved with that, it's kind of like what we're doing here. They have meetings and they have participation and they have people who present, so you can get your name in there as being part of that group.
Awesome. And Michael has a question about if there's a template available for EPSS for articulate storyline, or some good examples, style examples that you've come across.
Well, I don't think there's a template, and if there is, I'm just not aware of it. But I think that just the example that I showed was a very good sort of high-level example, and it's not embedded. It's actually something that, for that organization, it would sit on their desktop, and they would access it, when they needed it in different times of different workflows that they were doing. So honestly, it's a lot like a tabbed interaction, and you would just have drill downs depending on how much detail you have.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I really liked how it had just the quick steps and then the detailed steps if you need all the screenshots. That was for the Salesforce, but you could do the similar thing with Storyline.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool.
Yeah, and that's really what defines it as performance support, is the level of detail, the design being from smallest to largest in the pyramid, starting up here and working its way down.
Yeah. And you had mentioned that, you're able to kind of really keep your weeks full with doing performance support things. Like, what percentage would you say that of your workload is actually working on this performance support type?
20 to 25% of probably my year would be performance support. Probably 50% would be development of e-learning courses, and another 25% would be design.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I really like how you can just think through and then make this interactive database for people that they can have really quickly. And so I'm going to kind of shift over to the panel for a second. Dennis has been sharing some really awesome resources. And on the panel today, we've got Dennis and Sean and Lita. Let me see if Lita is on. Yeah, so Dennis, Sean, and Lita. So do you have any...
Should I stop sharing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and stop sharing, and then we'll just kind of have a conversation then. So Dennis, Lita, or Sean, do you guys have any experience with performance support? I know Dennis does. Maybe he wants to share a little bit. And just what are your thoughts?
Myself, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. It sounds a little drowned out, but I can hear you slightly.
Yeah, let me trying to avoid wearing the mic. So essentially, for me, performance support comes in many different flavors, i.e. somebody was asking about a template. There are probably 1,500 templates because performance support, the idea of following that pyramid is bang on, but within that pyramid, you've got 1,500 variations. I mean, are you doing a process? Are you providing performance support for a process? How many possible outcomes at the end of each at the end of each point in that process are measurable to begin with? If they're not measurable, what are the different variations that could lead to something measurable? So there's so many different things where performance support, for me, as a process, might be asking a bunch of questions related to each step in the process and receiving feedback from that question as to, yes, that was successful, no, it wasn't. But even then, it's not so cut and dry, right? So it's kind of those, is there a problem? Can you blame somebody? That sort of thing. And then it leads back to you. Like, it's those kind of things where yes or no answers are what you kind of need to get as feedback in a performance support system. And with that in mind, understanding that there are different variations of yes and no as well, depending on what you are developing the performance support system against. You can become extremely granular. And the other aspect too is that would follow a process. Everything that you do can be broken down into a process. However, those processes may also have procedures that you have to follow that are built into the processes, and those procedures may have regulation tied to them. And, it just as I was saying, 1,500 variations of the pyramid. So it's a little tough to build 1,500 different templates. And even if you do that, every single one of them will have to be modified for that specific instance. If we look at performance support in the car manufacturing industry, that's a really cut and dry scenario. Things either work or they don't. And when they don't, it's obvious that they didn't. In most cases, if you're manufacturing cars, bolting on dashboards, if the thing doesn't fit, did you put it on upside down? Did you put it on backwards? This sort of thing. Is it the right model dashboard for that vehicle? So things are really, really cut and dry. But take a look at performance support on meeting outcomes. The process of holding a meeting. I mean, there is actually performance support models related, but the variations are just ridiculous because of the subject matter of the meeting and so on and so forth. And then some of the links I had sent, I did work with a product called Symfinity at CAE, where we had developed pilot training simulations. And this is not something that we would go out and buy. This is like $1 million product, okay? And what we did was we applied rules to things pilots would do in certain situations within the cockpit. So to give you an example, one of the ones I'd worked on was one called de-icing. It's where you have on the front, the leading edge of wings on aircraft, you have these bladders that air fills into to break ice on the leading edge of wings. And what that does is that de-ices the aircraft in flight. And this is the same with civilian or military aircraft. But, to have this happen, there's a number of different conditions that you have to analyze and identify. And then there's a procedure you have to follow if the conditions are answered are, yes, we've got ice, or, no, we don't. So even within that, we could not address every single aspect of the process. We could address what are the things a pilot needs to do to de-ice the wings of an aircraft while in flight. Okay, that sort of thing. The training, the skill, the competencies that were required to do this procedure were taught prior to. So the pilots had to gain the knowledge on what ice looked like on a wing, what the characteristics of their aircraft would act like prior to. So again, that wasn't something that Symfinity was able to deal with. So in that particular case, there were a number of different performance support tools. One of the things that I myself have always dreamt of, just so everybody knows, my big dream is to have people walk around with tablets, point the camera of the tablet at something, whether it be a car dashboard or the controls of heavy duty equipment or whatever. Point the tablet at whatever that device is, have it recognize the controls, identify the vehicle type and model and everything, and be able to get a set of instructions on how to use those controls and operate that vehicle. And that's something kind of real time this is one of my long-term objectives. I really hope to see that in my lifetime, that's an immediate performance support. That's me or you stepping into some sort of machine, let's say, that we know nothing about, and as soon as we basically are able to obtain recognition of what machine we're in, then that software would tell us how to operate that machine. And that, for me, that's another form of support, performance support, and that's what I call stimulation, not simulation. For me, stimulation is like live simulation. So
I think that's very cool.
Yeah, there's all kinds of different levels and different approaches to performance support. The idea of creating a link within a page in a course, like there's a question mark button. How do I do this? Right? You click the question mark button while in a question, let's say, and that would review the slides that that would send you back to the slides that you needed to review in order to answer that question. That's a method of performance support. Another method is the drill down approach, as Tammy had mentioned, where you would have a bunch of different tabs dealing with different aspects of that topic. So in the software world, it's not hard to create performance support, like in the scenario where Tammy was showing Salesforce, primarily because software never changes. Software always runs by the same rules, so it's really easy to say, okay, if you check this, then you're going to get these other things, this sort of thing, or then this will happen. But start dealing with the non-tangibles or the unknown knowns in performance support. It gets a lot more complicated. Hence, simulation or stimulation is really a good idea in those cases. That's it.
Thank you, Dennis. I like how every time you're done, you're like, that's it, or that's all I have to share about that.
Just trying
so
to be
we all
clear.
know you're done. Yeah, and I've also seen, like other ways of, for instance, if you've got like a shoe salesman that's out on the floor, I've heard of putting like a QR code on certain things, and then if they need to remember aspects about the brand of shoe or whatever, they can, scan that, and then it pulls up on their phone a few little things to remember. And then I also love the one that you're talking about, where it's like you're on a machine floor, you just, you somehow it recognizes which machine you're at. If you've got a lot of machine operators, exactly what am I supposed to do with this? That's really cool. Although hopefully they know what they're doing, but maybe in the beginning there.
Actually, you talk about that app. This is the Canadian Tire magazine. Canadian Tire is like the equivalent of like a home hardware kind of thing in the U.S. And they have an app that you basically just you point your phone at the product, and it brings up all the different prices and where you can get it and da-da-da-da. Another form of performance support. In this case, support of the magazine. Support profit levels.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, and then Sean has a couple of thoughts as well. So let's transition over to Sean here.
Yeah, thanks, Patty. Yeah, just a few thoughts really from the presentation. Thanks, Tammy. That was really good. I think it was interesting that help pages was mentioned a few times in the chat. I think it's an obvious area to make comparisons to when we're talking about performance support. I just think these things kind of evolve over time. That I think help pages now are still that kind of static reference in most cases, I would say. But there's obviously quite a few examples that kind of context is becoming more and more where, the examples like Salesforce where, it's really that short information tied to what you're doing. I mean, working in, let's say, non-consumer type software, I'm thinking things like telecom software or IP switches or electronic software where consumers don't get to use it. It's really kind of a much smaller number of engineers. It's kind of an area I've worked in. even things like help is a luxury that's never there, and that's something in the last few years that's even in that area being brought in more and more around the performance support on applications. So I think in the software world or in the software application world, we're probably a little bit spoilt around performance support. It's probably the one area where the information is so accessible to us, and that's going to only continue. Who knows what'll happen with AI and things like that, and how that might affect performance support as well. But I think there's a really kind of good lesson, I think, a reminder in terms of how we design e-learning courses too, is always, kind of have it in our mind that we're designing a course for somebody to learn and to develop their, cognitive abilities around areas or skills or whatever, but we're not trying to do performance support. And I think that's a mistake that, some people make in terms of e-learning courses that have like steps in them or lists of things to do in certain situations.
Right.
The reality is we're never going to remember all that. So the course gives you the context, the reasons why, what's going to happen if it fails. It stimulates you to act. And then the information then just points you towards whatever that steps are, and you'll dig them out then when you're going to do it. I think that's a good lesson there, outside of that software application piece, Dennis mentioned meetings, and it just brought up a reminder of a tool I had seen before. So basically it was, this is kind of a Northern Europe thing. This would never work in the States or many countries in Europe, but like Sweden, Norway kind of thing. So it's basically like a cube, like a cardboard cube you have in your meetings. And there's different words on each side of the cube. And it's things like, it says words like discussion or making a decision or challenging, things like that. And they literally, and I'm talking senior people, I've seen this used where if the discussion piece of the cube is facing forward, it means everybody's relaxed. We're just kind of discussing the topic. And then when you switch to decision, then everybody is forced to make a decision. And it really works. It really kind of structures how the conversation should go. So there's a lot of more simplistic things, I think, like that. When we step away from the computer, maybe around performance support, that kind of really has an impact on our day to day. The last thing, Dennis, I think your reality will come true. I've been kind of researching a lot about augmented reality and virtual reality, but I think you're talking more about the augmented side of things, and it's definitely going to happen in our lifetime.
Awesome.
There is a company that I had approached who do have this in a tablet app or a mobile app, but I had approached them about making this XAPI enabled, tin can enabled, so that it could record what you're doing. And this was part of the XAPI working group. I was approaching all the learning management vendors about this sort of thing. That was my cat. Make a long story short, they said their response was that no clients had approached them to do it, so they didn't want to do it. And that was really sad, because they weren't taking the initiative to look forward in the future and be able to turn their product into something that produces tangible results or traceable results, and they didn't want to do it unless they got paid some money by a client for it. They didn't want to, put out the money to make their product better. That was quite sad, I thought. I'm done.
Awesome. Thank you, Dennis. And I love Lucille's comment too about, just a little mini performance support about leapfrog. When her son was younger, he would tap his Scout toy to different spots of a cardboard book, and audio prompts and explanations would be heard. So it's everywhere. Sometimes we just, we're not looking at it through that lens. So, all right. does anybody have any other questions or thoughts? Otherwise, we'll end a little bit early today. All right, so I think that we are at a point where we can go ahead and, yeah, I love Dennis's cat. That is so cute. Oh my gosh.
Hey,
yeah, go ahead, John.
Let me ask a question then to Tammy then, if we do have an extra couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Maybe Tammy, you might just tell us a little bit about, I know you've gone through kind of what you do, but in terms of your role and what you kind of offer, maybe a bit more practically, do you kind of identify which areas performance support could work in? Do they tell you which area they're struggling with? And which bit of the puzzle do you do, I suppose? Do you write the content for what they'll see, or do you more work on the tool side, that type of thing?
So for me, I bring my documentation skills and experience into this more than anything else. So that's kind of, I had a lot of experience in knowledge management and process documentation and bringing that, to the table. We will have meetings at the beginning with the client that are very long sessions where everything is designed in one long 8-hour meeting, where everybody just sits down and maps it out like a wireframe. That is, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to build, here's what we're going to call all these things. And then we just take that map, and it's just really exactly what it is. It's a wireframe that tells everything that's going to be included. Go have interviews and conversations with the client and come to an understanding of what the content is going to be that completes those tasks. So that's really how the process works. I'm involved, but I'm not leading them usually. I get more involved around the interview stages, where I'm one-on-one talking with the client that has a subject matter, and bringing that to fruition and, actually seeing it, building it into the system. But I'm not the technical person who takes that content and integrates it into their system. There's another person who does that, and it's specifically around rules. They have certain rules that will drive production of a certain type of content, or related to a specific screen.
Yeah, it sounds like there's just many areas where people are interested in getting involved in performance support, depending on what skills you have and what you enjoy doing. It seems like there's quite a few different areas where you could really dive in. Awesome. Okay, anything else before we go? Good question, Sean. All right. So we will go ahead and, her name is Biscuit. Okay.
Biscuit.
Biscuit.
Yeah,
Biscuit.
Biscuit is cookie in English, and her baby's name is Cookie, which is in French.
Oh,
so they both have the same name, but that's how we work in this house.
I love it. Awesome. Well, next week we're doing a community hour. So that's, again, where we bring whatever we want to talk about, things you may be struggling with, something you want to brainstorm, whatever it might be. So definitely be thinking between now and then what you want to chat about, because it's the content's provided by you. Isn't that fun? And Madeline loves the challenges. Yeah, there's a lot of challenges on Slack. If you're not on Slack, then let me know. I can get you in there. Just send me an email. And everyone, let's thank Tammy for this incredible presentation and starting this conversation. It was very helpful. And I mean, I didn't really realize all of the different ways you could provide performance support. So that's incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, Madeline says you've really made her look at performance support in a new way. So that's
awesome.
Very productive. Yeah, awesome. All right, well, we'll see everybody next week, same time, same place. Have a great week, everyone.
Thanks, you too.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.
Bye.